Hello and welcome to the day ahead. It is Monday, February the 2nd. I'm Andrew Gagan. The local market is set to open sharply lower this morning, with ASX futures off by around 0.7%. President Trump's nomination of Kevin Warsh to become the next chair of the Federal Reserve has upended markets, with precious metal prices plummeting, the US dollar recovering and equities falling. Kevin Warsh, a former Fed governor, is perceived as a hawkish pick. That, combined with mixed tech earnings and lingering inflation pressure, as well as some uncertainty about a potential government shutdown, saw stocks on Wall Street end lower on Friday, with the small cap Russell 2000 losing more than 1.5%. For the week, the S&P rose 0.33%, the Dow fell 0.4%, and the Nasdaq was off by 0.1%. Apple wrapped up the week with a forecast of higher than expected revenue growth, up 16% for the March quarter, but warned that rising memory chip prices had started to pressure profitability. Microsoft added to the losses on Friday after falling 10% the previous session, after its cloud revenue failed to impress, while Meta shares closed around 3% lower. Tesla shares rebounded, providing the S&P with its biggest boost after reports that SpaceX is exploring deals with the EV maker and other companies run by Elon Musk. Shares in Verizon Communications soared after it forecast annual profit and free cash flow above market expectations. Sandisk shares also rallied after a better than expected third quarter forecast as AI fuels storage demands, but KLM Corp tumbled even after the company beat expectations for second quarter profit and revenue. In the energy sector, ExxonMobil beat Wall Street's targets in fourth quarter earnings, while Chevron's fourth quarter profits fell but came in ahead of estimates as it focused on cutting costs. The S&P's materials index led declines as US-listed gold and silver miners tumbled in response to the massive sell-off in gold and silver prices. Well, President Trump has chosen former Federal Reserve Governor Kevin Warsh to head the US Central Bank when Jerome Powell's term ends in May. His nomination prompted investors to reassess the outlook for policy support in the Treasury market, pressuring longer-dated yields higher. Warsh has called for regime change at the Fed and is expected to seek less quantitative easing. Upon making the announcement, President Trump said it would be inappropriate to ask Kevin Warsh whether he would cut interest rates, but said he was confident he was inclined to lower borrowing costs. Well, the nomination came as data showed US producer prices increased by the most in 5 months in December, amid some pass-through from import tariffs. The producer price index jumping 0.5% in December, after an unrevised 0.2% gain the previous month. US long-dated Treasury bond prices dipped following the nomination of Kevin Warsh, who is perceived as bearish for bonds given his preference for a smaller Fed balance sheet. The yield on the 10-year was close to 4.24%, the 2-year at 3.52%. Australian 3-year government bond yields have fallen to 4.25%, while the 10-year is at 4.82%. Markets pricing in a 70% chance the RBA cash rate will be increased by 25 basis points at tomorrow's policy meeting, with a total of around 2 hikes this year. The US dollar index rose around 1% following President Trump's Fed nomination. The Aussie dollar has fallen back below 70 US cents, now at 69.6 US cents. And gold has registered its biggest daily loss since 1983, as the US dollar strengthened after President Trump announced his choice of Fed chair, while silver saw its worst day on record. An appreciating US dollar and expectations for real yields amid perceived diminished risk are thought to have triggered profit-taking among the precious metals. Gold down around 10% to be at close to $4,860 an ounce. And silver has registered its largest fall in history, down 27% to be at $84 an ounce. And copper is up close to 5%, iron ore down 1% to 105 US a tonne. Oil prices are steady to be near 6-month highs, supported by tensions between US and Iran. Brent crude futures at $70 a barrel. And Bitcoin has fallen further to be trading just under 77,000 US dollars. Well, locally this week we get ANZ job ads today. Tomorrow, the RBA makes its interest rate decision, with expectations it will lift the cash rate to 3.85%. Thursday sees the December trade balance. On the corporate calendar, earnings season gets underway today. That is your day ahead. See you again tomorrow.